you are one, two, it's going live.
Great. Welcome back to the class 5 of the 2021 CISSP mentor program. You're stuck with me again, 3 out of the first 4. So, but plus is for everyone. You won't have to hear me for a while. And Charles mentioned a question that is not the Flying Dutchman, it's Queen Anne's Revenge behind me, which is what Flying Dutchman was based on. So there you go. I don't know who asked it, but I figured I'd let you know. Excuse me. Just remember when we're talking in the chat, keep it on topic. You know, no fighting. We don't want to have to moderate people. If you haven't done so already, go join up for the mentor program. There's a message board, pretty active from what I've seen. It's a good way to get some additional help. So we'll start with another dad joke. I think it's going to be a competition between Ryan and Evan and myself on who has the best ones. All right. What do you call a boomerang that won't come back? A stick.
I got that one.
And what's funny is I actually found this. This a company in Australia was selling this. So funny enough. All right. Hope you enjoyed the break. This is a lot. We've got 166 slides. It's a lot of stuff that is going to be memorization, right? So for this, we're going to, when I go through this, pay attention to what, the key points. What are we going to have to memorize? What do you have to know? And, with what we're seeing today, it's going to be just repetition going through it. All right. Some questions. What model should you use if you are primarily concerned with integrity of information? And we were talking through this. We know Brewer-Nash's confidentiality, or I'm sorry, Bill LaPage's confidentiality, because we talked about that 2 sessions ago, and BIBA, the I for integrity. So there you go. All right. On Intel x86 systems, the kernel normally runs in which CPU ring? So this is one of those things, again, you just got to know it. There's no other way around it. So it's ring 0. Just know that is the closest, right? We're running as close to the center as possible. Right? What type of attack against databases does an individual combine multiple pieces of information classified at a low level to reveal information classified at a higher level? Now, this is a little bit trickier than you might actually think, because, well, first off, I can eliminate 2 right away. That's one of the first things you want to do. I can eliminate cross-site scripting and SQL injection because I know those are not it. And that leaves me with inference and aggregation. And those are very similar. Aggregation is the act of collecting the data, and then inference is taking that data and making a conclusion from it. So inference. So just make sure you know those differences. Non-repudiation is best described as what? Proving a user performed a transaction, proving a transaction did not change, authenticating a transaction, or proving a user performed a transaction that did not change. Well, again, I know this, we're going to go through it a little bit. Hopefully you guys have read it. It's proving a user performed a transaction. All right, so we're going to finish up domain 3. This is a monster domain. Here's what we're going to be covering. And as I mentioned, a lot of memorization. The cryptography, you're just going to need to memorize that stuff. Same with some of the others. The other stuff is a little easier for having some real world examples. Cryptography is just a lot of memorization. So, all right. We're gonna start with symmetric encryption. Again, anything in the orange, make sure you know. Symmetric is one key to encrypt and decrypt. There you go. Secret key, keep in mind symmetric is speed and strength. Those are the 2 most important things. because they're going to talk about symmetric versus asymmetric and give you examples. So make sure you understand symmetric is fast and strength per bit. The downside is, yeah, you have to securely share that key, right? We're going to use the same key to encrypt as decrypt. Well, if I send, Evan an encrypted file, he has to have that key to decrypt it. So how do we get him there? How do we get it there? So that's the biggest challenge for symmetric encryption. There are two types, stream and block. So pretty straightforward. Stream mode is it's in a stream. Each bit is independently encrypted. I'm streaming the encryption. Block mode, exactly what it sounds like. I'm going to encrypt blocks of data. And then we're going to go through these numbers again, more detail, but these are things that you're going to want to know, right? What block mode or block symmetric cipher uses 56-bit blocks? Well, you need to know it's DES, right? All right. Know these definitions. Initialization vector. So what this does is it makes sure that when you're doing that symmetric encryption, it adds a random block of data. It makes sure that it's not the same every time, right? So as you can see in the example, a from line might be the same for every email. Well, we don't want that. So we put encryption or that initialization vector in front of it, make sure that it's random, it's different. And then chaining or feedback for the stream. We'll show what that looks like, but basically it's going back and using the previous encryption to start the next block. So here you can see what this kind of looks like. You got the plain text block. So this is what we're going to encrypt. We're then going to add our initialization vector. Right? That's what's going to make it random. We're going to encrypt it and then drop it down. So now it's our block 1. Well, then we go over here. Here's block 2. Same thing, right? Initialization vector, block 2. So at the end of the day, you would be decrypting all the blocks based on the size. Okay, so DES, you'll want to know this. Data encryption standard, 1976 symmetric cipher. 64-bit block size with a 56-bit key. Absolutely know that. They will ask in the exam about specifics around the different types of encryption. And so you're going to have to know what those different block sizes and keys are, because that's really the only way that's what the information they'll give you is just enough. So 5 modes for DES. And again, you're going to want to know this. Excuse me. Primary difference, block versus an emulated stream. Emulated stream being the block size of 1. So electronic code book, cipher block chaining, cipher feedback, output feedback, and counter mode. And we're going to go through those a little bit. But the electronic code book was the original. The rest were added, as you can see there. I don't think you'll need to know when the rest were added. You'll just want to know the 5 modes. So here you can see easy way to remember this. Chaining and feedback. That's the difference between block mode and stream mode. So make sure you know those things. All right. Electronic code book. You guys are asking, well, what is that? Well, it's very simple, right? There's no initialization vector. What we're looking at is you have a key, the plain text goes into that, and the cipher text comes out. So it's going to be the same. A replay attack is we're going to just keep hitting it, try to find that same output, same cipher text. All right. Yeah, this is just kind of funny. Yeah, so you can see the different passwords there, cipher text. All right. Cipher block chaining. this is the block mode. So it's going to XOR previous block into the next one. So remember, we talked about seeding it, right? So the first one is that initialization vector. The chaining destroys the pattern. We're not going to see the same thing each time. And the problem is, if there's an error in the encryption, it's going to cascade, right? Because it's seeding it and propagating that error. So this is what that looks like. So with this, you can see here, you take your ciphertext at the beginning. Let's see. Laser pointer. There we go. Let's see here. Plain text is going to feed into each one. Do you see how it's feeding in? So that's really what that looks like. We're just going to seed each one into the next. Cipher feedback, similar. Cipher feedback is stream versus block. Remember, the feedback is stream and chaining is block. So this is where it's going to be really important, because they're going to ask questions that are, if you don't know that cipher feedback is a stream that seeds the next block, or seeds the next block really, but it's emulating stream. All right, output feedback. Yeah, so it's going to, again, use that previous ciphertext, XORed to the plain text. The subkey is not I can't talk, is not affected. The errors won't propagate. So that's the big thing to remember for output feedback. The errors will not propagate. That's really a big point there. Again, here you can see it. You got your initialization vector, your key, you're getting this ciphertext, but this is going to then feed this next one. So if there's encryption, you notice it's feeding before it does the ciphertext. So you're not going to propagate any errors in the ciphertext. Counter mode. So like the others, it's a counter. Same advantages. Encryption can be done in parallel. So it's going to, if you look, you can see it's going to take your nonce, the original, it's got a counter, and it moves it up. And that's what it gets the encryption going. And I realize it feels like I'm probably going very high level, but this is what you need to know, and at the level you need to know it. So memorize this table, because they will have you or ask you questions that are fully dependent on you knowing this table. All right, single DES original, again, 64-bit block with 56-bit key, 16 rounds. So that means it does it 16 times. Work was reasonable in 76 when it came out, but now not so much. You can go to this world's fastest EFF DES cracker. I think they said it's 20, I think it's updated, or it's in the slides here, but they could crack DES in 22 hours. That was in 98. So I'm gonna guess it's significantly faster than that now. So triple DES, we're doing DES 3 times. Pretty straightforward. Became the standard in 1999. Weaknesses, slow and complex, right? So double DES, yeah, we don't use it due to the meet in the middle attack. I don't believe you'll get anything around double DES because it just doesn't, nobody uses it. This is the FIPS that explains it. Those are really interesting reads if you want to learn more and dive much deeper into these things. All right, so triple DES, again, it's that encryption 3 times per block. So it's going to encrypt it, decrypt it, and encrypt it. And there's 3 options there. You can see the 3 unique keys. When you do one key, you're going to encrypt, decrypt, and encrypt with the same key. So really, it's no different than single DES, right? We're not adding any complexity. We're just doing extra work for nothing. Okay, so two DES EDE is one key to encrypt and two keys and a second key to decrypt, and then going back to key one to encrypt it. So 2 DES, 112 bits of key length. Again, probably not going to be on there, but good to know. Triple DES, this is one that is important. 3 different keys. So we're going to use key 1 to encrypt, key 2 to decrypt, key 3 to encrypt. And so triple DES, 168-bit key length. Make sure you know that. And here's what that looks like when in reality, right? So you can see we're going to encrypt with Hannibal, and this is the input, right? We're going to say attack at dawn. This is what it comes out with. You can see the 1 key, it's the same exact thing. The 2 key, or I'm sorry, triple DES. So we're going to do the encrypt, the decrypt, and then the encrypt again. And so we will have the same, right? When you look at this 1 key, it's the same. It doesn't change anything. That's why we don't want to use that. If we were using different keys, it would show, the output would be here. It'd be a different key. It would be different, a mess of stuff, and then down the road. All right. International data encryption algorithm idea. So international replacement to DES, patented. Idea, 128-bit key, 64-bit block size. Again, memorize and know what the different key size and block sizes are for each of these different algorithms. Yeah, the patents obviously cause a problem, and it's slower compared to AES. AES, I'm sure most of you are familiar with. This is the current standard. So you'll want to know on this third bullet point, this is a really important piece. 128-bit with 10 rounds, 192-bit with 12 rounds of encryption, or 256 with 14 rounds of encryption to encrypt a 128-bit block of data. So they might give you a question that says, what algorithm encrypts 128-bit blocks of data and the key length of 192 bits, right? Or, using 12 rounds, what is the key length? It's open. It's what we like. Free of any intellectual property restrictions, and set to replace DES. That was what it was designed for. So here were the 5 finalists. Really cool. If you go and read about all those, there's, it's really crazy. If you enjoy like the history and understanding it. All right. AES 4 functions. Make sure you understand this. And this is going to look a little bit confusing here, but we've got some graphics here I think that will really help you, will help clarify it. So it's got the subbytes, shift row, mix columns, and then add round key. Okay, so the data is called state. It's a block. It's 4 rows of 4 16-bit blocks. So what does that look like? Well, here's the first one. It's subbytes, but here you can see 4 rows, right? And each one of these is 16 bits. So it's providing confusion, substituting the bytes. So there's a substitution table that they would have, and that is how it makes that substitution. You can see here A22, it's going to go to B22. So then shift rows, well, now we're going to just shift the rows, right? You can see it's no change. This is A00. Well, now we're going to move everything over 1 to the left, over 2, over 3. So what does that end up looking like? So make sure you know that shift rows is exactly that. It's just shifting the rows over. Mixed columns, finite field mathematics. You don't need to know what the mathematics are. Just need to know that it's diffusion by using math. AES add round key. So this is the final function applied in each round. So it's going to XOR it, all right, swap it out. Sub key derived from the key and is different. But what you need to know, again, you don't need to know the details around it, but add round key is the final function in XOR. So altogether, this is what it would look like. So you've got your plain text, comes in, you go down to your subbytes, your shift row, your mixed columns around, and however many rounds, right? We've got, again, remember this, 10, 12, and 14 rounds, and what the different key key links are. All right, blowfish and twofish, again, want to know these. Blowfish is 32 through 448 with a default of 128 to encrypt 64 bits of data. Again, what you want to know there, what algorithm has a variable key length between 32 and 448 to encrypt 64-bit blocks, bits of data. It was one of the AES finalists. So 128-bit blocks using 128 through 256. So it could do 32, but to be part of the AES, it bumped it up to 128. There's the blowfish encryption algorithm. You can go grab it if you really want to. And twofish, oh, I don't know what happened here. Same thing. So you can see it's got the 128-bit block size and key size from 128 to 256, 32-bit CPUs. RC5 and RC6, these are by RSA. So the easy thing to do, if you see an algorithm that starts with that R, it's RSA. And yes, it is the RSA you're probably thinking of. Block cipher, 32 for testing for RC5, 64 for replacement, or 128, and then key size 0 to 200 or 2040. Again, you're going to have to memorize all these different numbers and understand what each one of these does. REC6 was one of the finalists, based on RC5, but altered to meet the requirements for AES. 128 using 128, 192, or 256-bit keys. So again, memorize. And here is a nice chart for you guys. You know this inside and out. And yeah, it's about all you can do. All right, asymmetric encryption. This fixes the pre-shared key. So Diffie-Hellman key exchange, and we will go through that a little bit more. RSA was in the RSA algorithm invented in 1977. I believe you may need those dates. I don't remember, but it uses two keys. So symmetric is one key, asymmetric is two keys, public, private. So math, the math behind it is, one-way functions. It's really easy to go figure it out one way, but really difficult to go the other way. And we'll show you that here a little bit more in depth as we go through it. But this is kind of the math behind it. You don't need to know this, but you can just kind of see what the process is, and it's not simple. All right, so there are two primary methods, right? We've said one-way functions. One is factoring prime numbers, right? So what does that mean? Well, if we look here, you can see it's easy to figure out what is 6,269 times 7,883. So that comes up with 49,418,527. Easy on a calculator, but trying to break that is now, hey, what two prime numbers multiplied together equal this? And so you can understand, hopefully you can see how that is fairly strong and how it works, right? That's why it's pretty fast, right? We're just doing multiplication. Yeah, factoring no shortcut, basis of RSA, factoring large composite numbers, so they're very large. And so what that means is the final number here, right? This is your public key. This is what we're putting out there. But the private key is what the two numbers were. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to everyone. All right, the other one is discrete logarithm. Opposite of exponentiation, easy for you to say. 7 to the 13th power, easy. You'll notice, again, math, right? It's easy to do one way, really difficult to do the other way. So here, again, same thing. What's 7 to the 13th? Easy to find that out. But turning it around and saying, what is 7 to what power? That's very, very difficult. So Diffie-Hellman, you will definitely want to know this. It allows two parties to securely agree on a symmetric key via public channels. Diffie-Hellman key exchange. I don't think you won't need to know all the formulas behind it, but really what you're gonna really want to know is that Diffie-Hellman, if you see Diffie-Hellman, it's key exchange, right? That's the easy way to remember that. Then we have elliptic curve cryptography. So one-way function, discrete logarithms is applied to elliptic curves. Elliptic curve ECC is stronger, less computational resources, and used in low power devices. That's what you're going to want to know. Really, these last three are really, really important. All right. So what are the trade-offs? You will want to know the differences between these. And again, here you can see there's some explanations there, but asymmetric is slower than symmetric, right? Because symmetric is one key, that's it. Asymmetric is weaker per bit key, per bit of key length, and then they're used together. So you use asymmetric RSA to send somebody a symmetric key. What does that mean? I'm going to use asymmetric, my private key, to encrypt the symmetric key, and they can decrypt with my public key. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Hashing, encryption using an algorithm and no key. That's the that's the key. There's no key in hashing. So one-way hash, because you can't reverse it. Variable length plain text, and we'll go through these a little bit more, into a fixed length hash value. So yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself. So provide integrity, right? So you've seen the hashes of software. You download it, is it the same? It's making sure that nothing inside that hashed package has changed. SHA-1 had 160-bit hash. MD5 is 128-bit hash. Now you want to use SHA-2. SHA-3 is out there and has been, but nothing from last I heard. Very little, if anything, works with it, and nobody wants to do another migration. All right, because hashes are not unique, and the number of possible plaintext is larger, you could have a collision. So, it is possible. In this case, you could see based on the hash, you've got Michael and Toby ended up coming out the same. And so when you see that, that is a weakness of hashes. And we'll go through it and explain it. So MD5, Ronald Rivest, RSA, 128-bit hash value based on any input length. So what that means is if I were to hash this entire, all this text, I'm going to get a 128-bit result out of it. If I just hash this first line, I'm going to get a 128-bit hash value. So it doesn't matter how long the input is, you're going to get a 128-bit hash. SHA, secure hash algorithm, SHA-1, 93. SHA-1 creates a 160-bit hash value. So again, same exact thing. And now SHA-2 is recommended, and then SHA-3 is there. But basically, it's the exact same. What is my input? And regardless of how long it is, I'm going to get, in this case, 160-bit hash value. Hash a variable length. Hey, look at that. Remember that. So it's got, message digest of the different sizes and using 3, 4, or 5 rounds. So I think what you want to remember, hash a variable length. So if they say anything about, what creates message digest of X, 128, 160, 192, using 3, 4, or 5, or, this hash algorithm can use 128 or 160-bit digest in 4 rounds, right? So that's kind of the information you want to know on that. And this is what those outputs end up looking like. So you can see they're all very, very, what's going on here? There we go. Very different. And you can see it's a fixed length for this. Who knows how long this file actually, or big that file is, or what the input was. It's always going to be the same length of that output. Okay, changing it up a little bit. How do we break in? We're looking at cryptographic attacks. So we talked about the algorithms for asymmetric and symmetric and for hashing. Now, how do we break those? So brute force, it's literally trying every possible combination. This will work eventually. It's just a matter of how long, right? So the thing with the encryption algorithms is they're strong enough that it would take centuries to come up with every possible key. Yeah, we'll talk about one-time pads. I want to get into that. Okay, so known plain text. Well, so I know what went in and I know what the output was. So now using those things, can I figure out what key was used? And so with that, you can start putting it in and testing it. Chosen plain text and adaptive plain text. So in this case, we're going to say, I have this plain text. I'm going to run it through and try to determine what the key was. Adaptive is going to basically start with that chosen. We're going to pick what we want, but then based on that, we're going to make some changes each round to see if we can figure out what the key is. All right, chosen ciphertext and adaptive chosen ciphertext. Same thing, just using the ciphertext, right? So plain text, I had the stuff, the information before it was encrypted. Ciphertext, I have the information after it was encrypted. All right, meet in the middle attack. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Encrypts on one side, decrypts on the other, and tries to figure it out. Attack is a known plain text attack, and so the attacker has both matching plain text and a ciphertext, and then goes the other way, right? We're going to go into the middle, try and figure out if we can make that chosen plain text match the cipher, or the cipher match the plain. And that's what will give us the key. Known key, well, I know the key. It's pretty straightforward. In this example, if I know that the key is just uppercase and numbers, I can omit all the other characters, right? So it's going to make that key space much smaller. Differential cryptanalysis. Difference. What is the difference when I have similar related plain text encrypted? So really, it's kind of man, I cannot talk tonight. Adaptive chosen plain text. Yeah, you're looking for that non-randomness. So if I put in related plain text, do I see anything that will give me that information about what the key is? All right, linear cryptanalysis. All right, so this is where I've got a lot of plain text and ciphertext that I know was created with the same pair or the same key. And then based on that, I look at what are the similarities? Can I find anything that's similar, right? What are the similarities between that? So it's linear cryptanalysis is when you have a bunch of plain text and ciphertext at the same time. Side channel, physical data to break it. So monitoring CPU cycles, power consumption for encrypting and decrypting. Side channel is using physical. Birthday attack, named after the birthday paradox. So birthday paradox, in a room with 23 people or more, the odds are greater than 50% that two will share the same birthday. Now, this is a great one. As you can see there, the instinct on probability and risk is wrong, right? You're not trying to match your birthday, just any two birthdays. So this is where we're going to try and create those hash collisions and be able to, break the key. Key clustering occurs when two different symmetric keys are applied to the same plain text and produce the same ciphertext. So I've got two different keys, somehow the same plain text, or I got one plain text, two keys, one ciphertext. Oh, hang on one second. So Ryan and Charles, I honestly don't remember. Uh-oh. Are we there?
Yep, I heard you.
Okay, my Zoom just quit responding, so I'm not sure what's going on. But if you guys lose me, I apologize.
I think we still got you.
All right, digital signatures, signed documents. This is non-repudiation. Remember, we talked about that in the quiz. So it's saying this is authenticity of the identity of the signer and proof of the integrity. Right. So it creates a hash. It uses a hash function to create a hash value of the plain text, and then encrypting the hash with a private key. They provide again authenticity and integrity, non-repudiation, no confidentiality. The plain text is still unencrypted, but I can prove if I receive a document from Evan that is digitally signed, I can know with comfort that he sent it and it has not been changed. So this is what that looks like. Sorry. So you got your data coming into the hash, signer's private key, that's your signature, and attaching it in. So, and then using the public, if the hash values are the same, you're good. HMAC, symmetric encryption with hashing. So very similar to the digital signature, it's just using symmetric versus asymmetric. Okay, so HMAC, IPsec, you want to know that. The difference here, you must pre-share the secret key. And then once shared, then we can send back and forth using that key. So you're going to receive, it comes in, I'm going to receive it locally, decrypts, and if they match, if the hashes match, we know we're good. PKI, so all three in public key infrastructure. So digital certificate with public key signed with a digital signature. This is going to be the easiest way is SSL, right? They're putting their, well, I'll wait. I'm going to get ahead of myself. I always do that. All right, so PKI, you've got certificate authorities, and you will need to know these lists or these responsibilities. So digital certificates are issued by certificate authorities. They authenticate the person or organization before giving them the certificate. And then you can have either a private, internal, or a public. So really what you want, certificate authority, it issues the certificate. And they authenticate the identity before they issue the certificate. Certificate revocation lists, again, the CAs maintain those. It's a list of certificates that have been revoked, right? They're, for whatever reason, no longer. So in that case, when you check, you'll know, oh, this is not a valid certificate. IPsec, suite of protocols, and we're going to go into more detail on this, but you see this a lot with VPN. You've got authentication headers and
Hey, everybody. Ryan here. We lost Brad on the Zoom, so we're going to give him just a quick moment here to reconnect.
all right. Sorry about that. My Zoom crashed. So that's always fun. Okay. All right. I'm going to wait here, make sure that for the moderators to tell me we're back on. There's about a 20-second delay. Joys of remote. All right, we're good. Okay, so IPsec, suite of protocols, authentication headers, encapsulating security payloads. We're going to go through those in a lot more detail. There are two supporting protocols there. As you can see, the ISACAMP and IKE, we'll go through those as well. All right, so authentication headers and encapsulating payload. So authentication header, you want to remember, it provides authentication integrity. I'm talking too fast because I know there's a lot of content. I should slow down a little bit. For each packet, no confidentiality, right? So authentication header, digital signature, right? We're verifying that I can trust the authentication and integrity of that packet. This protects against replay attacks. And then the encapsulated security payload provides the confidentiality. So that's what you're going to want to make sure you understand the difference. Authentication header is authentication and integrity. Encapsulating security payload is confidentiality. So this is what this looks like. You can see you've got your authenticated. with your IP, your authentication header, TCP, and your data. And then here, within here is your encryption, right? So here's our ESP header, that's where we're going to start it. And then everything in here until we're done is encrypted. All right. Ooh, IPsec Security Association, one-way connection, used to negotiate ESP or AH parameters. So how are we going to talk? If the two systems communicate via the ESP, they're going to use two SAs, one each way, right? Hey, I want to talk to you this way. Hey, I want to talk to you this way, making sure that they know how to communicate with each other. If they leverage the authentication headers, they'll then use two more, right? So you'll have one SA for each ESP and AH. Crazy, I know. Each connection identified by a unique 32-bit number. That's the security parameter index. So just know 32-bit is the security parameter index. And then the SA process is managed by Internet Security Association and Key Management Protocol. So FRSecure manages the SA connections, right? So we've got one way for each type of connection, and that's what it is. That's how IPsec works. There you go. And I know, again, seems pretty high level, but you know, this is what I use to pass the test, so I guess it's enough. Tunnel transport mode. So you can use it in tunnel or transport. Tunnel mode is used by the secure gateway. So we're going to work in a tunnel. The ESP makes that encrypted connection. It encrypts that entire packet, including everything, including the original headers. And we're going to show you a graphic here that'll really help. Transport, it's only doing the data. So what does that look like? Here, you can see, you know, you've got your authentication header, and then tunnel mode, we're adding some additional information here. And then in the ESP, you can see we're not encrypting the original IP or the header. And then in the second one, man, I really am struggling to talk tonight. You're creating that new IP, right? Because we have a encrypted tunnel, and then you're encrypting the original IP, the TCP information, the data, and so on. So transport mode, we're only encrypting the data. Tunnel mode, we're encrypting everything. IKE is IPsec using MD5 or SHA-1 for integrity, and then triple DES or AES for confidentiality. So with this, you want to know the difference between IKE and ISACAMP. The big difference is, you know, the SAs versus using MD5 integrity and triple DES or AES for confidentiality, negotiated by an internet key exchange. Two sides of the tunnel will talk. They'll use this to figure out, okay, what is the best, most strongest, and fastest combination that we both support. So in this case, AES over single DES for confidentiality if they both support it. SSL and TLS. SSL authenticates and provides confidentiality to web traffic. So again, you know, that SSL certificate is the public key. Transport layer security, it's the successor. SSL is really, you shouldn't be using it anymore. So here you can see, you know, the data is encrypted out of the gate via asymmetric encryption. So what happens is you go to that site, you see the HTTPS, your site downloads the digital certificate, which includes that site's public key and signed by the certificate authority's private key. So if your browser trusts that CA, then I know that that's valid. If I don't trust the CA, I'm not going to trust that certificate. Right. Yeah, Netscape in the 90s. Anybody remembers that? SSL2 was the first. 3 fixed some security issues, but honestly, SSL is deprecated. You want to use TLS 1.3. PGP, pretty good privacy. Asymmetric encryption in 91 uses Web of Trust. So instead of having a central authority, I'd say if I trust Evan and Ryan trusts me, Ryan trusts Evan. So you basically are going to start trusting. You can see how that web would build out. SMIME for email. MIME is multi-purpose internet mail extensions. SMIME uses PKI to encrypt it. And it could be done on the email server. Really, that's all you need to know. SMIME is for email. Well, MIME is, if you see MIME, it's email. If you see the S, it's secure, and it's using PKI. Escrowed encryption. So in this case, what we're doing is we're taking that private key and splitting it. So then different organizations have their part, and they're only going to release their portion with court order. So this is that balance between the individual's privacy and the need of law enforcement. So, you know, if you have the whole key, you can do it. If you only have a third of the key or half of it, it's not going to help you. So escrowed, taking that private key, splitting it, and securely held by third-party organizations and only released with proper authorization. Yeah, Clipper chip. 93, they were going to put this into telecommunications devices. It was, I remember when this came about, it was a big deal. It didn't really last very long, but it used the skipjack algorithm using an 80-bit key and classified as secret. So yeah, I don't know if this will be on the exam anymore or not. We'll see. But just know Clipper chip was into telecommunications devices, and it was using a classified algorithm. No, not good. Okay. Whew. How do we do this? Steganography, we're hiding things. We're going to take something and hide it in basically in valid files, right? Here you can see the story of the Greek historian. He would shave the slave's head, put tattoo instructions on it, wait for the hair to grow back, and then send the slave across, right? So we're kind of hiding the details. The person on the other end knows where to look. You know, messages hidden via steganography are often encrypted first. So then you've got confidentiality of the data and then secrecy. So a lot of times you'll see things when we're doing this with, you know, really the biggest part I see it in is like capture the flags. You'll see they'll hide files inside of a PDF. You have to open it up with zip and find what the information. If you're just looking at it and just double click that PDF, it opens as a PDF. You will have no idea there's anything hidden inside of it. Here you go. Yep. So you just take your original and hide it inside the stego image. Digital watermarks, encoding data into a file. So it's going to be hidden. Oh, not always, but think of this where you see, you know, a date or, you know, the website over a video, right? We're going to encode that data into a file. It could be hidden. This is in the book. It's pretty funny that basically they got tired of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences got tired of films being leaked. So what they did is they gave unique digital watermarks to each screener. And then when they showed up, you would know who it was, right? Because you had a unique digital watermark for each of the screeners. Okay. Whew. I'm going to take a break here and get a drink. That's a lot of memorization. Hopefully.
Brad,
Oh, yeah.
tell me a dad joke, Brad.
Oh gosh. Can a kangaroo jump higher than higher than a house?
I don't know.
No, houses can't jump. All right. It caught me totally off guard there. I had to think of one. The encryption is tough. All right. Physical, this is part of it, information security definition. So what are the terms? A man trap, this preventative physical control, 2 doors. Each door requires a separate form of authentication. Bollards will go, those are the red balls out in front of target. Smart cards, well, it's an access control with an integrated circuit, and then tailgating, following someone into a building without having proper credentials. Okay, so physical assets, you can have people, buildings, systems, data. When you see in a question on the exam that has something to do with human safety, employee safety, anything like that, that will be the right answer. It is the most critical. So if there's a fire and what are we going to do? They give 4 options, and one of them is ensure people have evacuated safely. That's going to be your answer. Okay. So we need to know physical or perimeter defenses. What are these? These are on the outside, right? We don't want to do defense in depth, but think of this perimeter as fences, doors, right? What's the first thing that we're putting up physically to protect the building, right? So fences, and we're going to go through all these as well because you want to know, right, 3 foot to an 8 foot deterrent, right? And they will give you a question about this. I know I had, similar questions around, a scenario with the size of a fence. What type of fence was it, right? Was it a deterrent or a preventative? So make sure you understand the difference. And then designed to steer ingress and egress to the controlled points. Gates, so you will need to know the types of gates because they'll ask you, or give you a scenario and ask you what is the appropriate type of gate. So, gate 1 or class 1 is residential, class 2 is commercial general access. So think of that as you can see there, that parking garage. Class 3, the loading dock for those big 18-wheelers. And then class 4 is your restricted airport or prison. So control points at the perimeter. So you want to secure the sites using fences and topography, so the flow of the land, to steer traffic to those control points where you have the gates. And that is not a good implementation of a gate or a fence, I mean. All right, bollards, again, like I said, these are those, the big red balls outside of target, right? Strong posts designed to stop a car. That's really what they're for. In front of the convenience stores, secure facilities to prevent cars from entering, right? Yeah, you can use those concrete planters, but again, bollard is a post or concrete, ball or planter designed to prevent cars from entering, right? So, and this is an actual real picture that we did from an assessment. And this is not a good implementation. So first of all, that's wide, too wide. There's no protection on this side. You can see cars are here. I think you got this giant tank with all this ice. I'd be nervous. Okay, you're gonna need to know about lights. It's gonna be both, could be a detective or a deterrent. So criminals are going to target that poorly lit target over one that's visible, bright enough to illuminate desired field of vision. Fresnel lights, think these are the ones used in lighthouses, right? So we're going to aim the light in a specific direction. And so with this, also when you're studying, make sure you understand that in the book, it has some specific examples around, how far should the light go? What should the foot candles be? What should the lumen be? What should, the lux be? And so make sure when you're reading through this and studying, you pay attention to those things. Lumen, amount of light one candle creates. Foot candles is 1 lumen per square foot. And then lux is the metric system we're used now. Lux is 1 lumen per square meter. Closed CCTV, we've all heard this one. Closed circuit television is a detective device used to aid in detecting the presence of intruders in restricted areas. Now, you could use it as a deterrent. So you're going to have to watch and understand what the state or how the question is phrased. If you actively have, if you're put the cameras in very conspicuous places, that could be a deterrent, right? Well, I see a camera, I'm not going to do the bad thing. Detective would be, well, a bad thing happened. Let's go back and see what happened. CCTV. So you've got infrared, so seeing it in the dark. The tube cameras, you've seen those. Modern is using the CCD, so using a digital one. You will want to know that the cameras have the irises that act like a human iris, right? So it controls the amount of light that enters the lens by changing how the aperture, how big the hole is that it's looking through. What's in focus and what can it see? Those are your things that you need to consider when you're looking at CCTV. What's actually visible, right, with the field of vision, and then how deep can I see? What can I see and make out? More light allows a larger depth because a smaller aperture puts more of the image in focus. The wide aperture in low light, so it's wide open, so lower depth of field. So you want to make sure that a small aperture is larger depth of field, wide aperture is low light, and lower depth of field. Right, you can have pan and tilt, moving left and right, up and down. You could have a fixed view. That's where it's just one place, it's not moving. For the displays, I'm sorry, I thought that wrong. So when we're looking at displays, when we're watching it, fixed view would be, I might have a matrix of 3x3. I have 9 cameras, and it's just going to show all 9 all the time. Auto scan is going to be a larger picture, and it's going to say, okay, camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, so on. And then, oh man, I totally messed that up. Can we edit this, Brandon? Fixed is just one camera. Multiplexing is where you would have the matrix. All right. VHS is magnetic tape, backing up images from tube cameras. So you would have your old tube cameras running to VHS, usually sitting like on the refrigerator in the break room with no protection. CCD uses a DVR or NVR, so digital video or network video. So, is it a standalone device or is it on the network? NVR is centralized storage of all video data, as opposed to the camera sending it to its single DVR. So some not so good camera placements. Here, it would be really easy to just reach up and unplug it from behind, right? The camera is looking this way. I can come up from behind that door and unplug it. And this is a great shot of the back of a sign. So talk about security. Just because it's there doesn't mean you got to do it right. It's not good. Locks are preventative. By locking something, I'm preventing people from getting in. Doors and windows. So you might have a mechanical key lock, combination locks, or electronic. So this is your swipe, your smart card, right? You're gonna hold it up to the reader or the stripe where you slide it through. So key locks, you have to have a physical key. The problem with keys, you can copy them. So we lose accountability with key locks. Common type is pin tumbler lock, has 2 sets of pins, driver and key pins, and we're going to see a little bit more of those in detail here in the next few slides. Correct key makes the pins line up with the shear line and allows the tumbler to turn. And again, we're going to see examples of that, and it'll make a lot more sense. Using the incorrect key means it doesn't turn. It won't work. All right, ward or warded locks. Think of this as your skeleton key. Right, you've got the different branches poking down and out. A spring bolt lock is a locking mechanism that springs in and out of the door jamb. So as I close it, it's going to allow the lock to close, or the door to close and the lock to kick in. Deadbolt, rigid. Door cannot be closed when the deadbolt is unlocked, right? So deadbolt, you're going to have the lock sticking out. You can't close the door. Spring bolt and deadbolts extend into the strike plate of the door jamb. All right. Oh, here we go. So here's your deadbolt, right? You can't use that. Here's your spring. You can close the door with this. Here's your skeleton key, right? The ward lock. You can see it has to turn specific wards, match that up. Here is your shear line. And what would happen is if you have the correct key, it will push these up into this line, and that's what allows it to drop. And then this is just how you would identify that key. All right, lock picking, art of opening a lock without a key. Be careful, understand what the laws are in your area, because if you have a lock pick set and aren't careful, you can get in trouble. So it's basically a set of locks, or a set of picks, tools that allow you to move those pins that we just showed you and let them click above that shear line. So you have the tension wrench, so you're kind of turning the like you would be turning the key. So it's putting pressure so those pins don't just drop back down, and then working it back and forth and making sure that you bump each of those, or lift each of those pins above the shear line. Bumping, so this would be a shaved down key, and then you insert it and then hit the key and causing the pins to jump, and then turning the key to open the lock. Yeah, all key locks can be picked and bumped. It's just how long will it take? Master and core keys. So the master key opens any lock for any given security zone. So you might have it on the floor or the whole building. Obviously, access to that master key should be very tightly controlled. That would be bad if that got out. You have to change all your locks. The core lock, you can see that here. That's a lot of times you'll see that on like the filing cabinets, things like that. You can remove that core and then replace it with another one. If that core is removed, it really isn't functional as a lock. Same thing with this. You have a core key that can remove any of the cores. You want to make sure you keep that very, very secure. Combination locks. So these are the ones from high school where you had your locker and you had to spin it around with the numbers, alternating clockwise and counterclockwise. It's weak for production environments such as data centers. So don't want to do that, but you know, make sure you understand make sure it's an appropriate level for what you're protecting. You could have button or keypad locks for numeric. So this would be where you might have 9 numbers, 1 through 9, or 1 through 0 at the bottom, and you have to punch in the key or the combination to get in. Yeah, a lot of them do have limited accountability. You only have one combination for everyone to use, so you don't really move in there. Very vulnerable to with prolonged use, right? You see the 4 numbers that are worn down. You know, I saw one where it was 1, 2, 4, and 5 clearly worn down. The rest were brand new. Well, I have a limited number to test with, and so able to get that on the second try. In the brute force, you could try everyone, but that would take a long time. Is that worth the risk for the attacker? Compromise via shoulder surfing. So I'm watching an employee put their code in, and then I now know it. Yeah. So the simple locks, this is important. Limited combinations are not preventative deterrent. Low security, an employee restroom, but again, no sensitive data or assets. All right, so smart cards, magnetic stripe cards, we've all seen these. It's going to have the smart card means it has a computer circuit, right? So you might see an integrated circuit card, contactless. So you can see there that you can see the chip, the stripe card. It's when you stripe or swipe. I mean, good Lord. All right. Smart cards, magnetic stripe cards. You must, the contact card must be inserted into a reader, contactless or wireless. So RFID has an RFID tag that is read by the transceiver. So when that tag gets close to the reader, it activates and tells who it is. Magnetic stripe has that stripe, so credit card. Now we're starting to see a lot more of cards in the US become smart cards, but for the longest time, we didn't have that. So, we only had the stripe, we didn't have that chip in there. The chip makes it much more difficult to steal the data. So Common Access Card, worldwide, smart card by the Department of Defense. I like this, it's used for providing dual factor authentication. So I have to have my smart card and my password to log in, or I'm going to use my smart card to digitally sign and verify the authenticity and integrity. It stores the data with cryptographic certificates as part of the PKI, so you're really have a lot of information on there. It could be a combination with electronic locks, and then better accountability, because when you go to that reader, it's going to log who swiped or who put their key in at what time. So that's what this looks like for that Common Access Card. You can see that integrated circuit chip right here. It's got all the information, and you could also swipe it. You could read it off the barcode. All right. Tailgating or piggybacking. Unauthorized person follows an authorized person into a building after the authorized person unlocks and opens the door. So really up here in Minnesota, it varies depending on where you are. For social engineering, it's important. But here, if I want to get in, I'm holding a big sheet cake. Hey, can you help me in and get me to I got to deliver this. Can you let me in, right? Oh, sure. Tag, they go in, let me in. I shouldn't have been allowed in. So the other one, you could be we do this where, hanging out at a warehouse and hanging out where where the people smoke, and then being like, hey, IT hasn't given me my card yet. Can you let me in? Things like that. So this is not the tailgating we're talking about. This is a lot more fun. And that does not look like as much fun for piggybacking. All right, excuse me. Man traps and turnstiles. So man traps, preventative physical control, 2 doors. So you walk in, the first door closed and locked, and then you have to authenticate and the second door will open. So both doors cannot be open at the same time. If an intruder gets in, right, they're trapped. Turnstiles, these were intended to prevent tailgating, right? So on the subway or whatever, you've got the 3 prongs at the sports football stadium or whatever. Just prevents people from tailgating. Only one person at a time can get through. So yeah, secure data centers, you could use floor to ceiling turnstiles with interlocking blades. So it's literally two pieces like this. One opens and closes, but you cannot go above it. Man traps and turnstiles, you have to fail safe. So if there's an emergency, power out or a fire, whatever it might be, you need to be able to get out. So no system should require authentication for egress during an emergency. Remember that, fail safe, and going back to human safety, that's the most important thing. Contraband, identifying objects prohibited. So this is the TSA checklist, right? Or metal detectors, looking for, it could be, looking for illegal drugs, whatever it might be. So contraband checks, think of, TSA metal detectors for that. All right. Motion detectors are a bunch of different kinds, and you will need to know the difference. So ultrasonic and microwave, think of this as Doppler radar, right? They're going to send out the energy and wait for that response to come back when it bounces. So in this example, if the motion detector sends it out and it comes back from that 20-foot wall, right, it's going to be consistent every time. Well, if somebody walks in front of it, that time is going to change. That's how you're going to know there's a difference, right? That's how it detects it. Active sensors are actively sending it. Okay, so photoelectric motion sensor, similar, but not the same, right? It's going to send that light across. Think of the red light you see, in the movies or, around, like on your garage door. Read only. So it's going to send that beam of light across. If that beam is broken, it's going to trick or trigger whatever action is programmed. Oh, there you go. All right. Perimeter alarms include magnetic door and window alarms. So you've seen these. It's where you've got the 2 pieces, and if they separate, it breaks that connection. So it's got a circuit, and if that circuit is broken, then it goes off. Armed for secure areas, and then general areas off hours, nights and weekends. If it's armed, then it's centralized, and it's going to alert if any of those connections are broken. So here's what exactly this. There's another example of it. All right, doors and windows. Yeah, attacker, it's the path of least resistance. So they're going to attack the weakest link. So in this case, you might have, say a concrete wall with a hollow core door, so it's not very secure, or you have a really secure door, but you just have gypsum drywall. I know there's been stories of where they were doing construction and people were able to break in because they just had the drywall up. So be careful with that. Hinges should face inward or have a hinge protector on it. Reason being, if it's not protected, you can pop the hinges and just remove the door. And then, yeah, doors with internal motion sensors should never include mail slots. That would be, think of if you had like going into the grocery store, it senses you. Well, if you just do that on the out, so if you were walking out, it would have that motion sensor to unlock. Well, if you have a mail slot, it's pretty easy to put something in there and wiggle it around and trip that motion sensor and unlock the door. So externally facing emergency doors, they need to be marked for emergency use only and equipped with a panic bar. So with that, you usually see these as like red with the double bar, the push bar. And then if that panic bar is pushed, its alarm should go off. Okay, glass structurally weak and dangerous, right? We've all dropped glass and seen it shatter. That's not good. You can use bulletproof or explosive resistant glass. And then you'll see the wire mesh, right, where you've got the crisscrosses within it, or security film. You can add a film to the back. A lot of it will have stop the shattering of it. So important to know, if you're using a simple glass window in a secure perimeter, right, we said here's our outside, you really should have a compensating control, such as a burglar alarm. Right? We have the magnetic alarm. You will want to know the differences and and it's in the book, what the different types of glass and the alternatives are. They will explain, what are the advantages of plexiglass versus Lexan? What's the disadvantage of plexiglass? And if I'm not mistaken, plexiglass will yellow over time versus Lexan won't. Lexan is, obviously, as you can see, it's race car and airplanes windshields. All right, you need to know about walls, floors, and ceilings. So when you're looking at a wall around your data center, slab to slab, right? So floor to ceiling, it needs to be secure. Raised floor, you don't know, right? So if you're in a data center with the raised floor, does that wall go slab to slab, or is it stopped? Same thing with a drop ceiling. Lift up the ceiling tile and look and see if that goes all the way up. I know our social engineers have successfully unlocked office doors when the person accidentally left their key in the office by climbing up over into the plenum, the area above the ceiling, and down into the next office and unlocking it from inside. So it absolutely happens. Gypsum, I skipped one there. The secure perimeter, strong enough to resist cutting, right? So with that sheetrock, you can use a knife to cut it open, right? That's not a secure perimeter. More, brick, concrete, those types of things would be more appropriate. You have to have the appropriate fire rating. So what is the time to fail in the event of a fire? And it does have this requirement. Make sure you know this down here at the bottom. Protection for information technology. You need to have it separated by fire resistant rated walls. Floor and ceiling constructed of non-combustible material or limited material, and the resistant rating shall be commensurate with the exposure no less than 1 hour. So your walls and door need to be fire resistant till an hour. All right, guards are dynamic. A lot of different options here. May aid in inspection. So you've all seen this where you have to walk up into the office building, show your identification to be allowed in with the guard standing there. Let's see. yeah, watching CCTV, responding to the incidents, right? Act as a deterrent. Well, again, we talked about it. Criminals are going to go path of least resistance. So if I see a guard, I'm going to probably go to an unguarded building versus a guarded building, right? Okay, so professional guard, this is important to know, they have attended advanced training or schooling, whereas amateur guards or the mall cops have not. So if they're professional guard, they've gotten additional training. Pseudo guard, an unarmed security guard. Very, very important. Guards' orders should be complete and clear. That is very important. I just realized I stopped sharing my video when it crashed. Yeah, so you want to make sure you remember with a guard, the orders should be complete and clear. And they'll give you guards' orders should be and 4 different sets of words. You got to make sure you know it's complete and clear. What's the weakness for guards? Well, they're susceptible to social engineering. So that how do we address that? Well, we're going to give additional security awareness and training. Come on, there we go. Dogs, a lot of times, junkyard dog, right? Deterrent and detective. How could that be the case? Well, you can see a site without dogs more likely to be attacked than a site with dogs. That's your deterrent. Or dogs might bark and alert security guards. There's your detective. Primary drawback is liability, legal liability, right? That's really important to know. Why don't people use dogs, or what's the biggest drawback to dogs? Well, what if they bite someone? Are you legally liable? And then these are my moron dogs. So I don't know why anybody would ever attack that. All right. Physical security. So with this, you want to know site selection, design, and configuration. Very important. You're gonna need to know all these different things. We'll go through them again in more detail. So building a secure facility, such as a data center, from the site selection process through the final design. So you might get an example where should they be building, right? So they'll give you some different examples and say which of the following would be the best site to build a data center on. And we'll go through what that means and how you would pick that. Greenfield process, choosing it. Greenfield, undeveloped. It's just greenfield, grass, right? Easy. Okay, topography is physical shape, hills, valleys, whatever it is. Typically, you'd see high security leveraging or altering topography. So, right, you've got military installations in mountains. You can use this to control entry and exit, right? We can use the topography to help. Think another one, castles back in the day built on the very edge of a cliff, only allowing one path in and out, protected on 3 sides, using the physical shape of the land to protect the facility. You have to consider what the utility reliability will be. That's very important. Like it says, electrical outage is probably the most common. So you need to know and take that into consideration. And then you'll need to know uninterruptible power supply, a battery, and that'll a lot of times they'll condition and protect against electrical failure. Generators are longer periods, but you need to have a contract to refuel and make sure you're testing it on a regular basis so that when you have an emergency, it actually works. Factoring crime rate. Remember, primary issues, employee safety. So what are we doing? Do we know if we're going into a high crime area, is that preferable, or do we want to go to a lower crime area, right? Employee safety, human safety is top. All right, site design and configuration. Yeah, site design can't compensate for poor site selection. I mean, if you make a bad decision about where you're going to build, it doesn't matter what you do when you're building, it's a poor location. Site marking, data centers not externally marked. A lot of data centers just look like big warehouses. I mean, technically, I guess they are. Really, they're trying to hide what they're doing. They'll have generators that are built to look like sheds or hidden, right? They try to hide that information. If you saw a warehouse with a bunch of generators and a whole bunch of HVAC, that could be interesting. Yeah, in Netflix, there you go. It doesn't it doesn't mark it. It's very common. All right, shared tenancy, Jason. So shared tenancy could be, it's multiple tenants in a single building, high rises downtown. So their physical security impacts yours, right? If the other tenants have poor practices, you're exposed to that. Adjacent is the same or similar, I should say. Meaning, as you can see, the bank heists, they think you've got multiple businesses in a row. Well, I can break into a less secure one and then work my way over to the secure one, whereas maybe I wouldn't be able to get in from the front or back. Yeah. So there's a good example. It's really an interesting read. Another risk, shared tenancy or closed wireless security. Are you bleeding your wireless signal? Can other people that shouldn't have access get access to your wireless? Shared demarc, the demarcation point. So that's where your ISP, your internet, comes into. That's where the ISP's responsibility ends and now mine begins. So ISP is responsible for getting it to this point, and now I'm responsible for getting it from that point to my machines. So a lot of the shared tenants have a single demarc. So everything comes into one room, and hopefully they have strong physical access control. And if you're on a shared demarc, can you put something in place to protect yours, right? Your internet connection in, can I put a cage in here or whatever it might be. If it's very secure, then yes, you would want to have multiple segregated demarcs. All right, system defenses. This is kind of the last line, right? This is the attacker has gotten physical access. So what are we going to put in place on the system if it is compromised physically? Asset tracking, you can't protect unless you know where and what it is, right? So this is one of the biggest things that we see. People want to throw in a bunch of really fancy tools and things like that. Well, what do you have? I don't know. What, can I see your asset list? I don't have one. Well, this is fundamental, right? I need to know what I have and where it is. As it mentions there, if you have a serial number, model number, it's very helpful. Port controls, so allowing copying to or from a system, so think USB drives. A lot of times small enough to evade that perimeter contraband check. So what do you want to do? Well, you want to disable those ports physically. It used to be that people would glue them shut. Now you can have system policies that block it. So you can plug something in, it would allow a charge, but it's not going to allow read or write, or only read. So make sure you understand that. Drive and tape encryption. So this is protecting data at rest, right? It's on the drive, it's on the tape. It's not in transit, it's not being moved, it's not being manipulated with software, it's at rest. So this is one of those few that will protect that physical, or protect data after physical security has been breached. So what we were just talking about, all mobile devices And any media containing sensitive information need to be encrypted. Hold disk for mobile devices. So mobile devices, not just phones, tablets, but also laptops, right? Anything that is moving. And then you can have the encryption, decryption is either in software or hardware. Not really, it doesn't matter. It could be either one. And a lot of the information, or I'm sorry, a lot of the breach notification laws can allow, if you have encryption and can prove it, they will have an exclusion for reporting that breach. All right, media storage and transport. Any sensitive backup data stored offsite, it could be either, I don't care if you're backing it up to the cloud or you have, whoever at Iron Mountain or one of the others come and pick up tapes, just have it offsite. Rotating that media offsite, you need to have a very strict procedure for how do you do this? How do I require, or how do I request what's coming back? And then how do I know what they have and when it's coming back? Yeah, always use a bonded and insured company. Just don't mess around with that. Secure vehicles and store media secure site. I actually went to a secure storage location that was built in limestone cave, and that was crazy cool because it keeps it at a very constant temperature year round. And you'd just be walking down and there's these giant limestone columns with boats or RVs or all these different things that people want to secure. Making sure that storage site unlikely to be impacted by the same disaster. So as the primary site, so we want to have geographic diversity. I don't want to have my primary location and then next door having my backups, or a half a mile away having backups. So making sure you understand the risks of the disasters and that your backup site is geographically diverse. Yeah, never do informal practices. So we've absolutely heard stories of, well, I need a backup. Well, so-and-so's on vacation. He keeps the backups in his trunk. Don't do that. Media cleaning, destruction. All forms of media need to be securely, or should be, I guess, securely cleaned or destroyed before disposal. So this is going to be, right, like it says, physical, paper files, electronic, hard drives. So making sure that we clean it or destroy it. You can have dumpster diving attacks where I'm going to go in and search through the dumpster for unsecured trash. When we've seen, I believe it was CVS that got a OCR finding for not training because they found PHI in the dumpster and it wasn't securely removed or disposed of. Or technical, we can recover information from those unallocated blocks on a disk drive. Remember, we talked about that earlier. All cleaning instructions need to follow a formal policy. Why is that? Well, we need to set expectations of what is required. So, hey, I need to record the serial number of any hard drive. Was it low, medium, or high risk data? When was the activity done? And who did it? It's accountability at that point. All right, environmental controls. Yeah, HVAC, power, fire safety. Those are your environmental. Pretty straightforward. Electricity. Hey, reliable electricity is critical for any data center. Now, important, kind of seems silly, but it is one of the top priorities when selecting, building, and designing the site. Can I have reliable electricity? I mean, without the electricity, you're not going to be working. All right, you will want to know these. These are the electrical faults. They will give you an example and then say, what is this? And so it might be, Joe is looking at, or working and trying to figure out why his device keeps resetting. Well, but it's not turning off and staying off. Well, it could be a brownout, right? Where low voltage, it's not enough to actually oh my gosh, knock it out, right? You still have some, but make sure you memorize these. There's really good examples in the book. Take those into account. What can you do to protect against those? Well, surge protectors, that's going to protect against those electrical surge. So if there's a spike or a surge, it's going to trip and not either turn it off, right? You can either have it say, nope, surge, I'm tripping, protecting the electronics, or it has conditioners, the ability to condition it so that that spike doesn't get to your electronics. UPS, temporary, that's important. Temporary backup power. Again, it could also clean, allowing surges and spikes. And then, well, and others as well, but typically batteries, right? And it's a limited time, it's a bridge. So that's what's important. UPSs are temporary, it's a bridge. When the generator doesn't kick on immediately. Well, we can fail to our batteries, and then after X number of minutes, the generator will kick on and it'll transfer the electrical creation to that generator. So what are generators? Low power for longer periods. So UPS, short, temporary, generators, long-term. It'll run as long as there's fuel. So you need to make sure you have sufficient fuel stored on site for however long you're expecting it to provide power. You really need to make sure you understand as well. Well, you need to have a contract for fuel. You need to understand, what is the time to get fuel, and making sure you have enough so that, and knowing when you need to call to make sure you have a delivery of fuel. Making sure that they're not placed in areas that are flood or impacted, right? We need to have reliability with those. And you really need to test and service them, right? Again, worst time to find out there's a problem is during an incident or during an outage. And then go to that link. That's a really interesting article around generators, and you can see around Hurricane Katrina. All right, EMI, electromagnetic interference. Very important to know. Network cables poorly shielded or run close, they can have crosstalk where you're going to have the magnetism going across. And then you can use proper network cable management, which who needs that? But really never route power cables close to network cables. And Evan has a really good story about this where they would have random outages with network outages, and they couldn't figure it out because there wasn't a pattern or anything. Turns out, they eventually found that the network cable has been run over the ballast for the light in the women's bathroom. So anytime the light turned on, it was tripping and causing an interference and interrupting network traffic. So very important that you're not putting power cables or power supplies near network cables. HVAC, here we go. Air at a reasonable temperature and humidity. There you go, that's it. Within a data center, it's operating in a closed loop. It's just recycling the air. So what does that do? It's going to reduce your dust, right? We've already cleaned it. I know I'm not bringing in outside pollution or contaminant. All right, should employ positive pressure. What that means, or in drainage, what that means is it's going out of the building. So if you open the door and you feel that blast of air, that's positive pressure. Untreated air should never be brought into the building. Condensation is a big deal. If you don't take into account and you put a AC unit in the above the ceiling or whatever, and don't take into account consideration, you could have leakage and cause problems. So that's where you would see the drains, right? The little tubes that route the water away. And then all gas, water lines, and where their drains are need to be formally documented. If there's an emergency, you need to know, where do I need to go to look? All right, data center temperatures, you can see kind of what those recommendations are. Usually you're going to want to look at, say, somewhere in the 65 to 80 range for the exam. So just so you know, they're all over the place. All right, humidity 40 to 55%, temperature 68 to 77. There's all kinds of different sources. Really what you want is to understand, that, like I said, the 64 to 80 and a humidity 20 to 60. What's interesting, I've learned this and I didn't know it, is you should be adjusting your humidity and your temperature during summer and winter. Slightly higher humidity in the winter and then lower in the summer, it'll save money. There you go. All right. Know the difference between static and corrosion. Static is a sudden discharge that can cause damage. So how do you mitigate that? Well, proper humidity. The lower the humidity, the higher the likelihood of static. Making sure you have grounding in place, and the anti-static wrist strap. You've always seen those, I'm sure. I don't know if I've ever actually seen one using one in a IT environment. Probably in some of the more higher profile or higher sensitivity areas they do. But flip side is corrosion, where you're going to have high humidity. So you're going to get water, the water in the air to condense onto or in the equipment. So that could then lead to corrosion. That's why you have those guidelines for temperature and humidity. Another airborne contaminant, dust. You can see, fur, dust. I'm sure anybody who's been in IT has seen some pretty nasty internals of computers. Well, why do we want that? Well, it can cause overheating, right? We're not getting proper airflow, and can cause that static buildup. Heat, flame, and smoke. 3 methods for detecting fire. And then we'll go through those here in a second. You might, think of that. You have the smoke detector on the ceiling. Could just be local, right? It just goes off here, or you can have a centrally monitored that alerts someone. Audible alarm and flashing lights. Both deaf and blind will be aware of the alarm. Remember, human safety. Heat detectors. When it gets above a certain established threshold. So like it says there, a lot of times you'll see this in data centers. All of a sudden the temperature spikes 10 degrees in 5 minutes. Well, it's probably an HVAC issue. I need to get in there before there's overheating at the servers. All right, so smoke detectors work, like it says here, there's 2 primary methods, ionization and photoelectric. So ionization, small radioactive source creating a small electric charge, and it will identify when there's a fire. The photoelectric, it's going to be similar. It's an LED with a sensor. It's going to be noticing if there is a interruption anomaly, right? So ionization, radioactive source, photoelectric, light, LED. Like it says, when smoke, right, interrupts radioactivity or light, so there's an anomaly, lowering it or blocking it. So dust avoided in data centers for that very reason. You don't want to have false alarms. Flame detectors, they detect the infrared or ultraviolet light emitted by fire. as it mentions here, the drawback, well, you have to have line of sight to detect the flame. So if you have a flame detector and the fire's in the room next over one, it's not going to notice it, but a smoke detector would, because the smoke is going to travel. All right, almost done. Safety training and awareness. Making sure you train how, it's training on a specific skill, right? How do I operate the emergency power? Awareness training. Don't let people follow you into the card after you swipe your access card, or into the building after you swipe your access card. So you've got two different types there, but really it's going to be training is going to provide a skill set, right? And then awareness is changing user behavior. Evacuation routes, and most people have probably seen these. It's a map of the floor or the building with the red line to show you are here, here's where you go to get out, right? Quickest evacuation route in their areas. Guests need to be advised of the evacuation routes, and then you need to have a meeting point, right? So if there's an emergency, everybody evacuates. We have a designated spot where everybody will meet so that we can make sure everybody is safe. All right. There are two roles within evacuation, really important that you will need to know. Safety warden and meeting point leader. Safety warden, make sure everyone's out of the building. Meeting point leader, make sure that everybody's accounted for at the meeting point. There you go. Make sure you do understand those and what the difference is. You do have to take care for any handicaps. I've probably seen it in some of the taller buildings, right? You never use an elevator during an emergency. Well, if you're in a wheelchair, that's a problem. So there's special tools that can be used to assist evacuating people with handicaps. All right. ABCD fire. You will need to know these. And I'm going to go to the next slide. It's going to make it a lot easier. But you will need to know what type of fire classification suppression extinguisher is used for a given example. Class K is kitchen. That's really easy to understand. K, kitchen. So here's a really good way that I like. Here you've got your classifications and then some real good examples, what the type of extinguisher is, and then some identifications. But here's the way to remember it. A is ash, right? So if it burns and leaves ash behind, it's A. B is boil, C current, and D ding. It's a metal, right? It dings. So there you go. Nice little tip for you. So fire suppression within the exam, if they give you an example that says you're looking at replacing your fire suppression system, what would you do? And gives 4 answers, and one of them is consult with the expert. It's going to be consult with the expert. So just another little tip for you, I guess. And making sure, consulting the local fire code. Who do you want to? Do you want to make sure? Do you want to try and interpret that fire code, or do you want to go to the fire marshal and have the expert explain it and make sure that you're doing the right thing? Important to know, fire suppression works via 4 methods and could be in combination, depends, but you're going to reduce the temperature, reduce the oxygen, reduce the supply of fuel, or interfere with the chemical reaction within the fire. So make sure you understand what those 4 methods are, and that those are how suppression works. Okay, so what are the types of suppression agents? So water, it's going to lower the temperature, right? Below that kindling ignition point. We're going to spray water on the fire. Easiest way. For ash, right? That's where you would want, that's why you see the fire department spraying water onto a house. It's wood. You do want to make sure you cut any electrical power. You don't want to be electrocuted. That would be bad times. Whew. Soda acid. These are those old giant brass fire extinguishers. So how does it work? Lowering temperature and suppressive, it's going to interfere with that chemical reaction, right? So it creates foam, which floats on the top of some of the liquid fires, so it's going to starve it. So soda acid, lowering temperature and interrupting the chemical reaction. Or I'm sorry, man, I just said it too, starving the oxygen supply. So that's what that looks like. Dry powder, lowering temperature, smothering fire, starving it of oxygen. Metal fires, really, so do you need to know what dry powders are made up of? Do you need sodium chloride? No. What you're going to want to make sure you understand, dry powder, what does it do? It's going to lower the temperature, it's going to smother it, and it's going to starve it of oxygen, and it's going to be used primarily for metal. I think maybe a good way to remember that, D being dry. All right. Whew, CO2, smothered by removing the oxygen. Now, you want to know the risks on this one. This is important. It's odorless, colorless, and we can suffocate you. So you could suffocate someone. CO2, very dangerous. Typically, you would only want to see this in like electrical substations that are unstaffed. And a lot of times I think, there will be those additional safety controls there. So if you have to go into a CO2 protected area, make sure that you've got training on what you're supposed to do, and alarms about it as well. All right, halon and halon substitutes. Chemical reaction consumes energy and lowers the temperature of the fire. Here we go. Halon is being phased out. Make sure you know the Montreal Accord. So 1989 Montreal Accord banned production and consumption of new halon by January 1994. Know that information. Existing can be used. So if you have a halon system, you can get recycled halon. You just can't get new. There are, as it says there, some exceptions for certain critical use. So you'll need to know the replacements. Know all four of these: argon, Fe13, FM200, Energen, and you'll want to make sure. I think probably Fe13. You'll want to know that it's the most, it's the safest of the replacements. So as you can see, there are concentrations of 30% versus 10 to 15%. All right, almost done. Sprinkler systems. You're going to have to know all the different types of sprinkler systems and what scenario that would be appropriate for. So safe evacuation, primary goal of fire safety. Remember, human life is most important. So you've got a wet pipe. Make sure you know that. Wet pipe, water right to the sprinkler head. The pipes are wet. Okay. You'll have a small glass bulb that melts or breaks at a specific temperature. As soon as that happens, the water goes. Each head will open independently as that trigger is exceeded. So with this, you're going to need to know the different colors and their ranges. So you'll see this in here, just memorize it, but kind of cool, nice to see. So next time you're walking around a building with sprinkler heads, look up and see what color the bulbs are, and you'll know what the temperature is. Okay, pre-action, this is a combination. So you've got wet, dry, or deluge. So basically pre-action is 2 triggers. Okay, so you're gonna have dry pipe from at the end, and then wet or deluge at the other side. So if a fire alarm triggers, then the first piece goes and the water goes into where the dry pipe was. But then it doesn't actually release into there until the head opens, that bulb is broken or melt. Double interlock, so that was single. Double interlock, very similar, but it's going to use compressed air, which means both of the triggers need to have happened. So the fire alarm has to go off and the sprinkler head has to be opened. Pre-action, like I said, know where it's used. Museums, where, libraries, things like that, where if it went off, it would be really bad. Double interlock, cold areas such as freezers. Make sure you know what they are and where they're used. Portable fire extinguishers. So marked with the type of fire they're designed to extinguish. Remember, we just talked about that with A, B, C, D, and K. Small enough, you don't want to have something big and unwieldy that you can't use. And you need to know the pass method. So pull the pin, aim low, squeeze, and sweep. And with that, man, that was a lot. It was a long domain. This was a long slide deck. I hope everybody got everything. It's a lot of information, a lot of memorization. Leaving off on 212 in the book. Monday, we're going to get into more technical. Evan is leading the next class. He's good at technically. And with that, everyone have a great day, and we will talk to you on Monday.
Franken, if you're talking, you're on mute. He keeps telling me you're saying stuff, but you're on mute.